Welcome to The Compass, a show where we discuss today's world from a Christian perspective. I'm Ethan Holland.
And I'm Lyndsey Posey. Today's show is about human trafficking and Gen Z voting. Let's dive in.
Sex trafficking is a dangerous threat internationally, but especially here in the United States. Researchers have found that in Ohio, during a 3-year span, more than 4,000 children and young adults were found to be at risk of being trafficked. Over 1,000 children and adults in Ohio, including but not limited to the previous group, were known victims of trafficking during these 3 years.
In broader terms, the National Human Trafficking Hotline reported that in 2021, there were over 10,000 human trafficking cases involving over 1,600 people. Of these, over 7,000 cases were related to sex trafficking. These cases pale in comparison to the true size of sex trafficking, as the hotline received over 50,000 signals on trafficking. Based on demographics from cases the hotline deemed appropriate to publish, victims were typically adults, women, and foreign nationals. Texas, California, New York, and Florida had the greatest numbers of signals and cases, and South Carolina had 488 signals and 124 cases.
Despite the high number of national cases, the Human Trafficking Data Collection Archives report that a little over 2,000 people were referred to attorneys for human trafficking. While low compared to the total number of cases, this number is much higher than it has been in the past, rising by 62% in just 10 years. The number of people prosecuted has also skyrocketed by 84%. Quite scarily, nearly 2/3 of people charged with human trafficking had no prior convictions. Many of the people charged were white, and nearly all of them were male and United States citizens.
To help gain more accurate estimates of trafficking cases and help the victims involved, the Lancet suggests that healthcare officials be more involved with screening and treating victims of trafficking. Those who are trafficked often need medical attention, either for physical or mental problems. Health officials can help these patients transition away from the pain and trauma of what they've endured. If their confidentiality agreements let them, they can also share this information with organizations dedicated to stopping trafficking.
With more on this topic, we have Addison Boggs talking about the sex trafficking epidemic.
The fastest growing criminal industry in the world is the buying and selling of people, trafficking. Lots of companies have begun to take a stand against trafficking in recent years. Some have even set up their sales in a way that allows a portion of their proceeds to go toward putting a stop to this crime.
Greenville and Spartanburg in the upstate are some of the bigger areas in South Carolina for sex trafficking. The best thing you can do for any kind of crime prevention is just situational awareness and being aware of your surroundings at all time, not putting yourself in situations that are where you're by yourself or in unfamiliar areas or in dark areas where you can't see.
Being aware of your surroundings is crucial to staying safe in today's society. You never truly know what someone's intentions may be. However, safety is in numbers, so always have someone with you.
We have an interstate corridor from Atlanta to Charlotte that comes right through Oconee County. So we've had some cases in the past that have been off the interstate. We've had some cases where we've actually interviewed victims. And it's very difficult sometimes to get victims to cooperate because they're in this lifestyle and they feel like there's no other way out.
Sex trafficking can happen to anyone, so it's important that we do our part in putting a stop to this crime once and for all. This is Addison Boggs for MCSWU.
Thank you, Addison. After the break, we have Chief of Staff at Southern Wesleyan University, Andrew Beckwith, on to talk more about the horrors and dangerous reality of sex trafficking. Later, we will go to the streets to see what students say about younger generations and voting.
Wake up and focus. Because this is not a drill. This is not about cliches, shallow taglines, or some inspirational quote for you to tweet, snap, pin, or post. No, this is where snooze buttons are frozen, alarm clocks are broken, where feet hit the floor because dreams are now woken. This is it. Awaken your dreams. Awaken your soul. Awaken your purpose. This is Southern Wesleyan University.
Will you marry me?
Yes! Caleb is
very optimistic about their future together, but their future may not be quite so bright. Remember, ring by spring is not the goal. Stay safe and stay single out there during freshman mating season.
Hi, I'm Madeline Barrett. I am a Southern Wesleyan graduate, class of 2021. I majored in media communication in a concentration of public relations. I am currently at the reserves at Lake QE here at the sales office. I work with Coldwell Banker Kane. This original position was part-time, and then my supervisor saw my resume and saw all of the things that I've done at Southern Wesleyan, including hosting a number of talk shows, creating an Instagram account for our communications department, and she thought, wow, you just have blown me away with all of these amazing things you've been a part of, and I want to offer you a full-time position here. Southern Wesleyan invested in me, and I got a return on my investment.
Welcome back from the break. I am here with Andrew Beckwith, the Chief Staff and Executive Vice President at Southern Wesleyan University. How are you today, Mr. Beckwith?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. What do you know about sex trafficking as an issue in society or in general?
Well, I was first exposed to it when I was in the Marine Corps. I was stationed overseas in Okinawa, Japan, and we had an exercise for a couple of weeks over in Thailand in a city called Pattaya or Pattaya, which I learned subsequently kind of makes Las Vegas look like Disney World. And I was there with a flight surgeon and the chaplain. And we went out to dinner one night, and the chaplain had done some missionary work in that part of the country, so he knew which restaurants on this strip in town were restaurants where the waitresses only served food and weren't also essentially serving as prostitutes. So I remember walking down this street to that one restaurant, you know, kind of like a lawyer, doctor, and a priest type of joke, walking to a restaurant, chaplain, the flight surgeon. But just seeing these young women on the sides of the road, outside these restaurants, dressed very provocatively, and it was heartbreaking. And then further down, there were nightclubs that had these sort of cages extending out over the street, so you could look up and see them outside the building, and there were women, and these were, by the looks of it, Eastern European women, not local Thai women, up in these cages kind of dancing. But it was very, very sad, a lot of darkness and brokenness there. And so part of my job when I was there with the Marines as a judge advocate was to just make sure the Marines stayed out of trouble, and if they did get into trouble, to bring them home safely. Fortunately, there were no incidents, but that was kind of my first exposure up front to sex trafficking.
I'm glad none of them fell for that trap while you were there. How have you seen sex trafficking grow here and in other countries during your lifetime?
From what I've observed, I think just the increase of internet connectivity for basically everybody on the planet or close to it at this point has really allowed it to explode because, as I'm sure you know, sex trafficking is deeply intertwined with the pornography industry. So the production of pornography is oftentimes a form of human sex trafficking, and then the consumption of pornography fuels the demand for that market.
Yeah, it's really sad how it's just a vicious cycle. There has been a very moving and impactful movie that came out recently on this subject called The Sound of Freedom. At the end of the movie, it shows us some ways that we can donate to organizations that help stop and deal with sex trafficking. What do you feel like can be done to prevent sex trafficking or help reach the victims of it?
Well, certainly fighting against pornography, resisting that, in our personal lives, and trying to work for legislation that would push back on the pornography industry. I know there was some legislation, I want to say it was in New York State, I don't recall specifically, recently that required, I think, credit card age verification for consumers. So it made it more difficult to purchase pornography online anonymously. So that's obviously a deterrent and helps decrease demand. But also there are plenty of ministries and nonprofits that help women in particular leave situations where they're essentially being sex trafficked. And it's what I've learned in sort of reading about this and hearing some of the stories of victims is it's not the sort of prototypical young woman is kidnapped and taken far away and sort of held in chains against her will. It's oftentimes far more complicated than that. Women are taken advantage of economically, emotionally, relationally, but they find themselves stuck in a situation where they really have trouble getting free. So there are ministries that provide safe homes for them, where they can have a place to stay, and sometimes that's how they find themselves being sex trafficked, is they don't have a place to stay, they're addicted to drugs, and so it's easy to take advantage of them. But there are ministries that will provide a safe sanctuary for them to recover and heal and get treatment. So those are things that we can support.
Nice. If these institutions and personal choices are supported and made, can you see the situation getting better?
I would like to think so. My sense is probably that it's only increasing, again, with just the ease of international travel, all the disruption from some of the recent conflicts across the globe. And again, technology can be a tool that's used for good, but it can also be used for evil. And in the case of pornography, webcam girls can be victims of sex trafficking, and that can be distributed all over the globe, and the money is hard to trace. So unfortunately, I think the more that pornography becomes normalized in our society, and it breaks down these barriers, we as Christians believe that God created human sexuality exclusively for the union of one man and one woman in marriage. So anything outside that is sin. Anything outside of that ideal of marriage is harmful to us as individuals, made in the image of God. And the more we normalize behaviors across the board, which we see our culture writ large doing right now, the more we normalize sexual sin of any kind, the easier it is for people to be exploited into acting out in sexual sin and being victimized by it in both a physical sense and a spiritual sense as well.
That's a really good answer. Thank you so much for joining us on set, Mr. Beckwith.
Thanks for having me.
After the break, Zach Turner goes to the street to ask people about how they view voting and the younger generations. Then we have media communications major and baseball player Luke Staten on to talk more about what younger generations can do to be better informed when they go to vote.
Southern Wesleyan University is a Christ-centered university located right here in Central South Carolina. Our winter sports are jumping into action starting this November. To view schedules, live streams, rosters, facilities, policies, and special events, please use your phone to scan the QR code below.
Red light?
What red light?
Do you think you may need to pull over?
We are a mile away from my apartment. Let's just get back and it'll all be okay.
Don't fuss at me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What if the cops come?
The great state of South Carolina thinks I'm such a great driver. Okay, we'll see.
Get out the wheel!
We are back with more from The Compass. Lyndsey, that was quite the interview I had with Mr. Beckwith. What were your thoughts on it?
It was really eye-opening, and it leads me to believe that we need to shed light on the underlying behaviors that lead to these criminal activities.
I completely agree, and I feel like he really did a good job of highlighting how we should go about doing that. Shifting gears, we go to Zach Turner on the street as he asks our student body about how they keep up with the news and politics.
Thank you, Ethan. Voting and politics are major components of today's culture. Let's see what students have to say about how they consume their news and what they look for in potential political candidates. How do people at our age stay engaged with current events?
Well, I think a big use is like through social media.
Mostly through social media. I use Twitter a lot.
Probably Twitter.
I don't really get my stuff from TikTok or social media either.
Yeah. Have you voted before, or do you plan on voting in the future?
I have voted before. I voted in the last presidential election.
Legally, I wasn't allowed to vote, but this year I will.
Same.
I'm still up in the end whether I will vote this coming year.
I will vote this year for the first time.
Nice.
I will definitely vote this year.
Tight. What attracts you to candidates that you might want to vote for?
Policy all the way. Typically, I look for environmental policy, where they stand socially.
The biggest thing would probably be values.
I like to vote for candidates that I can see myself in.
Just we have similar ideas, like religiously.
Their beliefs and their morals.
I think probably someone that is a little charismatic, maybe.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Students Say. Now back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Zach. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook and Instagram accounts to tell us how you retrieve your news.
When we return from the break, we will hear from Luke Staten on Gen Z and politics. Stay tuned.
The Media Communications program at Southern University originally started with only 8 students, but now has risen up to 45 majors, and it was ranked number 6 in the state as of 2020.
Here at SWU, I feel like I've been able to build a portfolio. Like, we're actually doing hands-on work. That's what I appreciate the most.
I see a lot of potential in this program. It's been good to teach what I've been taught. I think that we just need to keep buying in to each other.
What if there's a place for you where your dreams and future collide with God's vision and direction, where thinking and doing go hand in hand with innovation, where servant leaders of the next generation are grown, and where your story can be written and change the course of history, where generosity is contagious and if you catch it, you just might change the world. This is it. Step into community, step into faith, step into life, step into Southern Wesleyan University.
Welcome back to The Compass. I'm here with Media Communications major and student athlete, Luke Staten. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. What makes you motivated to do your own research on politics?
I've always been taught about politics from my parents, and they have very differing views between each other, and so that's always been something for me to like fall back on and learn a lot about politics, and has kind of motivated me and grew me into wanting to care a lot about politics in our country.
Nice. How has your research on candidates and the news helped you better prepare yourself for elections?
I try to take a pretty rounded approach and try to branch out and hear different points of views and different news stations. I know there's a lot of people back where I live that's on the West Coast, and it's a lot of blue no matter who, and you want to vote one way, and then over here on the East Coast it could be a little different. But I think it's very important to hear differing views and find out what really you think policies match with your opinions.
How have you seen Gen Z students prepare for elections and do research?
I feel like we get a lot of bad rep, and people have said that young voters aren't really paying attention and we don't really care. And I don't think that that's 100% the truth. I think we just haven't really been taught how to care about it, and I think that's probably been a thing for all generations, is that when you're younger you don't really care about the politics because it's not something that you think is affecting you. So it's important for us to try to teach other students and other Gen Z voters how to learn about the people that they're voting for and how much it actually matters in their everyday life.
And what do you think we can change about Gen Z students to better prepare for elections?
One, registering to vote. That's a really big one. I know I have a lot of friends and people that I've talked to where they're not even registered to vote and they haven't voted and they've been able to in the past. So trying to convince them that their vote matters. It's hard in a system where our country is so big to feel like your one vote matters, but really it does, and it does make a difference in local elections all the way up to a presidential election. So getting people to register to vote, and then also for everything, informing them on how to vote and who to vote for.
Well, thanks for talking with us, Luke.
Thank you.
After the break, we will get a more in-depth perspective about how Gen Z goes about retrieving the news and political candidates.
Southern Wesleyan University is a Division II school that competes in 12 sports in Conference Carolinas. Located in Central South Carolina, SWU has great facilities and opportunities to offer potential student athletes.
I found my experience here at SWU to be really beneficial to me in my athletic career, but not only that, as to prepare me for the rest of my life in the future. Learned a lot of life lessons from this place that I hope to carry on into a family and a career.
From transfers to high school recruits, Southern Wesleyan offers a unique experience for everybody.
As a transfer coming to SWU, it was really hard for me to find a school because I wanted to go across the country, being from Washington. SWU reached out to me and they offered me and showed me kindness, and I felt like it was somewhere where I could really build a home and build a community.
Interested in becoming a Warrior? Fill out your prospective sports recruiting questionnaire today, found on the recruits page at swathletics.com. Go Warriors!
Welcome back from the break. As Luke talked about, where people get their news and political information heavily influences how they vote. Mainstream media plays a crucial role in informing people of political issues and informing their votes. However, these sources can be biased. Les Picker of the National Bureau of Economic Research reports that after Fox News, a conservative news station, was introduced to more cable channels across towns, those towns saw a small but significant uptick in Republican votes. Media outlets can select and twist the stories they share, as Fox and other mainstream media channels do, so we must be cautious when gathering our news.
While media outlets can influence voting in Generation Z, we also need to look at a more direct influence on voting patterns: parents. Gettingill et al. Found that children are much more likely to vote if their parents voted as well. They also found that children raised by more educated parents tend to become voters themselves. These connections exist regardless of what party or candidates the parents supported and which candidates or party the children supported. Parental influence is crucial for Gen Z's voting patterns, especially since researchers have found these first few elections can determine if and how Gen Z will vote for the rest of their lives.
We now go to Carolyn Justice, who dives deeper into the topic of Gen Z voting.
An era of technological advances and social media has particularly influenced Generation Z in the political landscape. These individuals born between 1996 and 2010 commonly use social media platforms, the internet, and even peers to access political information.
As digital natives, they are going to primarily get their information from social media, which has a problem with accuracy, but Gen Z may drive social media to become more accurate in the future.
I think Gen Z voters primarily stay informed through social media, which comes with a lot of misinformation, uneducation, and bias.
The level of involvement and political education among Gen Z voters varies significantly. Some are highly active, engaging in protests and signing petitions, while others may not even register to vote.
In the next election cycle, we'll see a lot more of a response from Gen Z voters as they want to see the appropriate leaders attack the appropriate issues and make sure their voices are heard.
Gen Z voters as a whole are generally more concerned with social issues, abortion, and women's rights. There is no debate that the sheer number of Gen Z voters can affect the outcome of an election if voter participation is high. This is Carolyn Justice for MCSWU.
Thank you, Carolyn. Ethan, now that we've heard so much about voting, what do you think is a good way to stay informed on political issues?
I feel like the best way to stay informed on political issues is to try and get unbiased news. I know that's really hard today because a lot of the mainstream sources tend to lean one way or the other. Like people say Fox News is more conservative, CNN is more liberal. And so it's like, well, who do I go to for an unbiased source? But you can look at both channels and see how they differ on their coverage of a story to get a more unbiased view just from getting both. And I know there are sources out there like websites online that'll compile news stories and say, hey, more conservative stations will say this about a story, more liberal stations will say this. This is how the story coverage varies between the two, like what this station talks about, what this station talks about. And so I feel like finding those independent sources or just hearing from both sides helps us step out of our echo chambers and make informed, rational decisions while also respecting people who disagree with us.
That is so true. Thank you so much for joining us here on the campus. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble channels to catch our next episodes and stay up to date with our student projects.